Battlefield 2042 has had a terrible start to its life cycle with legacy features, lack of content, awful connection issues, and a persistent mouse and keyboard input problem even after more than a year after release, to name just a few. But Season 3 has brought with it a lot of changes. In this episode of the Battlefield Breakdown, I'll be talking to you about all things Season 3. We'll look at exactly what has changed, what has worked, what hasn't. My name's Dame, and this is Dame Over. And in Season 3, which launched on November the 22nd, it brought some new content. There was a new specialist, Zane, who we'll talk about a little bit later on, the new specialist class system, which is still to be integrated properly, new guns, and a new map. So let's talk about some of this new content. Let's start with Zane. He's part of the assault specialist subset, which means just like every other specialist, he has a new symbol and word added to the specialist select screen next to his name. I mean, they're still going to add in some more changes, like I mentioned just now, but just having extra text on the screen is very confusing to me. The new class spec for specialists, disappointingly, doesn't actually do anything. There's been quite a fair bit of speculation around how this new role system might actually impact gameplay. Will it mean as an assault player you are more mobile? Do certain weapon types get buffs depending on who you use? Do explosives do more damage? A bigger healing radius for health boxes, etc, etc? Nope, none of this is a thing. It's just extra words on the screen. DICE are unfortunately continuing to fall short of expectations from the fan base, so I guess at least they're consistent. But anyway, back to Zane. He has a new unique gadget in the form of the XM370A. This is actually pretty interesting. It's supposed to be able to be used to chuck in some flak behind cover to take out enemies that are hiding behind it. Well, that does sound very interesting, and you can set the range if you use it right. Unfortunately, in my opinion, I feel like it's a little bit too specific, and just spamming it down a corridor or into a small room, it seems like the best way to get the most out of it. Zane also has an inherent trait where if he kills an enemy, he heals a little bit faster than all of the other specialists, and on paper Zane seems pretty interesting. A really cool gadget that you can use against infantry. It focuses on close quarters, and that new ability that will reward you for getting kills in close quarters. From what I've experienced from Zane though, it seems like these things are a little bit too situational, and I end up asking sort of what's the point when you've got other specialists that are better at the things that Zane isn't. On paper he seems really exciting, and I'm sure there are other specialists that are going to be worked into the game that are actually very exciting and very usable, but I'm pretty sure Zane won't end up being in that top part. Now, I mentioned that we had some new content, and that is one of the things we're going to talk about now, the new map Spearhead. And this map has been described as thus on the EA website. Spearhead is our latest CQC focused map. Nestled within the rocky formations of the Swedish wilderness, you will find Nordvik's manufacturing facilities capable of manufacturing high-tech weaponry and components for weather machinery, whatever the hell weather machinery is. I want you to focus on one thing in particular though. CQC focused, close quarters combat focused. Aside from the two gigantic cubes that you can only span 1.5 floors of, the map is, unfortunately, like a lot of the maps in 2042, an open field. It's so open with such little cover. One of my members decided to nickname it Field 2042 while I was streaming the other day. On the whole, I think the maps in 2042 are pretty poor because of the open field aspect that's present in almost all of them. The lack of imagination and I think mostly software and hardware capabilities mean that the maps are just not particularly interesting and don't really create a good gameplay loop. And Spearhead is probably the most fieldy of all the field-like maps. I mean, the CQC focus is the two large cubes I mentioned before, and you can access the ground floor and a small section that is an upper level to get you a little bit of a flanking route, and that's it. The cubes are humongous from the outside, but you can only really interact with roughly 10% of it. I'm glad that the crazy level of verticality that's usually in the 2042 maps, and you would have noticed this if you've played Battlefield 4 as well, I'm glad that that isn't present because at least the entire map is accessible, but I just kind of wonder what the whole point of having a huge edifice is and not doing anything with it. The only purpose I've seen it serve is really for cover for helicopters to get away from incoming rockets, which makes them even more difficult to take out. As you probably got from my explanation, Spearhead is not what I would call a good map. Unfortunately, it's another disappointment to add to the list, especially when it comes to new content being added to the game. And, you know, it's the only new map we have to play with this season. So I guess That's cool. And then we've got something that I thought was going to be very exciting, the mid-season event, the Battle of Nordvik. Now, this is spanning from December the 20th in 2022, going all the way through to January the 10th, which means you've still got a few days to play it if you haven't got in yet. And across the 3 weeks of this event, we are looking at 3 different game types that are focused on Spearhead and adding a little bit of lore, I suppose, to the season and to Battlefield 2042 on the whole, which, as we all know by now, the story that was behind all of this end-of-world dystopian future kind of idea has been kind of left in the dust. This event started the first week with Conquest Assault on Spearhead. From what I've experienced, one of the least popular game modes to ever be introduced to a Battlefield game, but for some reason we've decided to hash out some old turds, I suppose, and put that back into Season 3 just to ram it home that DICE really don't listen to the player base. And if you've played Conquest Assault on any of the Battlefield games before, you'll know that it's actually pretty underwhelming, unfortunately. It's very linear, there are barely any flanking routes, and thanks to the massive open field that is Spearhead, you can just basically get picked off by people camping outside of the zone that you're able to play in. But I thought this was just a minor disappointment. I didn't think this was going to continue for the next couple of weeks because DICE really had an opportunity here to grab a whole bunch of new players, especially with Season 3 being timed with the launch of Battlefield 2042 going to Game Pass and there being a huge sale on 2042 and other Battlefield games, bringing loads of people to the franchise. The second week of the Battle of Nordvik saw us have a look at Retribution, an entirely new game mode that basically takes some of the old aspects from Conquest, Breakthrough and Rush and chucks them all into one. This one was actually a little bit more exciting. Breakthrough is one of the modes that I think people tend to like a little bit more on Battlefield games, especially from Battlefield 5. That meat grinder aspect is something that people do really like. But if you are a vehicle user, I'm sure you like it much more because you're able to stay out of the way of being destroyed really easily while you farm infantry. But the bit that I liked the most was getting into the rush aspect of it. Unfortunately, it was only for the very last zone. This was okay for a little while, but the rewards, unfortunately, just like in the first week, were extremely lackluster. I will get to that in a second. Now, week 3, we are looking at the introduction of Breakthrough Chaos, which is, frankly, extremely confusing. I don't really understand the point of Breakthrough Chaos. It's Breakthrough, and that's all it is. You go from zone to zone, section of the map from section of the map. But the thing is, completely removing itself from all of the lore and all of the setup that's been made in Battlefield, from every other game mode that is out there apart from the ones that are on the portal, there are modifiers that have been added to the game, such as increased movement speed, faster redeploy times, faster vehicle call-ins, faster bullet velocity, faster reloads. Basically everything you can think of has been increased in pace. Now, I will say this, because of the map design, it makes much more sense, I think, to have the movement speed the way that it is, and having the bullets travel faster as well makes up for the extra pace that the enemies are going to be having as they're running around. So I'm not completely against it. I just don't particularly understand the purpose of just hitting a button that ups all the speed on absolutely everything. Also able to use your throwables and chuck them much further than you were before. So C5 has gone far closer to where it was before there was a random nerf that made absolutely no sense that only helped vehicle users, which means it's actually viable now. And while this mode is manic and it's a good way to grind out getting your specialists and weapons to the next tier that you're aiming for, it can get extremely grating, and the same problems that were persisting with the gameplay before are kind of intensified in some ways, but I guess if I'm being honest, it's mitigated by the extra movement speed and the extra capability you have, especially in close quarters if you've got good control of your movement and your weapon. And let's get on to the rewards from this Battle of Nordvik. Now, I thought it was going to be a really good idea. The rewards seem like a good addition to have, but unfortunately they were also extremely underwhelming. Now, each week gave you 3 different rewards and you could earn them by simply getting ribbons. Now, you get ribbons for almost anything. You can get revive ribbons, you can get capture point ribbons, you can get kill number ribbons, you can get gadget ribbons. There are so many different ways to get ribbons. There is no way to even really keep track of it and do it on purpose, but never fear, there was no reason to even think that you needed to do that because you get ribbons without even trying. 20 ribbons gets you all 3 of the rewards. In week 1, we had the Raider headgear for Sundance for 5 ribbons. 12 ribbons gets you the Revelation weapon skin for the MP9, and 20 ribbons would get you the Epic Death outfit for Casper, which looks unfortunately very similar to loads of other of Casper's outfits. Week Quest 2 saw the Bastion headgear for Falk, which looks basically like an Oculus Quest 2, the Marauder outfit for McKay, which is essentially a rehash for Sundance's headgear stuck on McKay's body, and the Overseer outfit for Irish, which just adds on a giant gas mask. With the third week giving you the following rewards: a bunch of leaves on a gun, a bunch of leaves on a tank, and a blue jacket on Angel. Now, the cosmetics, ever since they brought that in as a concept into Battlefield, have been unfortunately extremely disappointing. You can use your Battlefield coins to buy them. I doubt anyone ever really has, apart from the meme skins like the Santa Claus one, but I just feel like there's a hell of a lot of wasted potential here with these ribbons. Why was that the way to unlock it? Why has that been the choice that DICE have made for you to try and push to get the rewards for this extra special event? I just cannot get it whatsoever. It makes no sense in my head. You don't even need to try. You can play for less than an hour and unlock all 3 of them, which means that your game time in the season, the time when they're trying to bring loads of players in at the same time to up that player count, increase the quality of the game, make people talk about it to their friends, make people have better reviews on Steam, on Microsoft, on PlayStation Store, the time where they have a very good opportunity to grab the attention of the player base that has been so disappointed for over a year, to get them playing the game for long stretches of time, they've decided to make the rewards that you can get so incredibly easy, you barely even need to touch the controller or your keyboard or mouse. So look, Season 3 has been very disappointing. We can all hope that Season 4 is going to be much better, but we've been hoping from the very beginning that every tiny little update is going to turn this game around, but the problem is it's broken. The bones of the game are not good. It needs an entire rework, which is not going to happen. As soon as the legal obligation to put out all of this content is reached, DICE are going to pull the plug. EA are going to stop the funding. They're not going to be able to advance this game anymore. And I think it's only right. I mean, the sales numbers, the player counts, all of that tells a very, very strong tale of how DICE EA has failed the Battlefield player base. This is not the game anyone was expecting. This is not the game that anybody wanted. And this is not the future of the Battlefield franchise. Unfortunately, Season 3 encapsulates a hell of a lot of the things that are wrong with Battlefield 2042 in a very short space of time. And it's just mostly leading to disappointment. Now, I'm going to hope that Season 4 is at least a little bit more interesting and has a little bit more attention when it comes to other players, just so it can make my life a little bit easier and keep those lobbies nice and full. But to be honest, until the next Battlefield game comes out, guys, I would not expect you to have any fun on this game unless you're jumping in with a bunch of mates and just having a lark around. If you've been playing Season 3, please do let me know in the comments how it's been going, how you found it, the things that you've liked, the things that you've disliked. This is the sort of stuff that I love to talk about on the channel. Big thank you to my members here on YouTube and all of those supporters that support me on the streams that I do 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, from 2 p.m. UK time all the way through to 5 p.m. and sometimes a little bit beyond. Please don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you on the next one. That's game over. Peace.